Today I'm going to show and tell my experience with replacing the third brake light seal and removing water stains from the headliner. So in this first shot, you can already see that the top of the seal is basically doing nothing. The bottom looks like it's sealed pretty good up to about right here and right here. But above that, where it's all dirty, you can tell like there's just really no sealing right there where it needs it the most. The second shot is the opening all cleaned up, and that leads into the first thing you want to check. This upper edge here, where you can tell it's not sealing, is it's pretty flimsy and it's pretty notorious for being not very straight. It can be kind of caved in sometimes, and so you want to check it, make sure it's pretty straight. I just used a small level as kind of a straight edge to reference. And if it's kind of pushed in too much, you can actually just reach in with your fingers and kind of pull it out gently just a little bit, so it's actually sealing better for you. The next thing I noticed is these two small dents along the bottom edge. I'm not 100% sure, but I had a couple of hail dents that were popped out, and I'm pretty sure the guys may have done these by putting some tools up under the roof there to pop those dents out. So I laid a paper towel over that edge, used some pliers to straighten those little dents out, and checked it all for flatness. I'm not too worried about the bottom edge because I think that's going to seal just fine. It's that upper edge that gets you. So this is what the seal looked like when it came off. It was pretty dry rotted on top, but we're just going to peel that off and clean it up. The seal comes off pretty easy, but it does leave behind the actual adhesive layer. This is what it looks like when just the adhesive is left, and you definitely don't just want to slap a new gasket on this. You want to take that adhesive layer off as well and get down to bare clean plastic. It takes quite a bit of scrubbing with hot water and soap, but I did get all of that old adhesive off. This is what it looks like with bare clean plastic, and it's ready for the new seal. I went a little overboard and cut little circles out of the leftover gasket material to actually run the screws through, because the little washers on the screws were pretty brittle and cracking, and I wanted to make sure that nothing was going to leak through the screw holes either. It's probably totally unnecessary, but I decided to do that anyway. So here's the light all ready to go back in with the new gasket. I decided to put the adhesive side of the gasket to the sheet metal of the truck because it was just easier to get it all aligned properly that way. Immediately after installing the light back into the truck, I noticed that the light still does not sit very flush against the metal of the truck all the way across. The two contours just don't match one another very well. I tightened down the screws all the way, and the gasket was fully compressed on either end of the light, but in the middle, honestly, it didn't even look like it was touching. If it was touching, there was no compression at all, if it was even touching in the middle. So that is definitely just going to leak again. The gaskets I got off of Amazon were actually a 2-pack. So what I decided to do is take the other gasket and actually just stick the adhesive side to the light. So I actually have 2 gaskets now. One is stuck to the light and one is stuck to the body. And right there in the middle, it's just foam on foam, but there's plenty of thickness now. The gasket is compressed, and I think this has a whole lot better chance of sealing. Moving on to the headliner stains, this is what it looked like initially. The stains aren't terrible, but they're pretty bad. There's a couple of different lines that you can see there. So the first thing that I tried was just some hot water in a spray bottle, and just rubbing it down with a lint-free cloth. After that, you definitely want to use a shop vac to suck as much liquid and moisture out of the headliner as possible. I actually used a small little spot stain cleaner because it's more mobile, but basically you just want to suck as much liquid and moisture out of this headliner. Otherwise, you're just going to keep pushing those stain lines further down the headliner. This next shot is about an hour or so after spraying and wiping the headliner just with hot water. It actually helped a lot. You can see that the lines are much more faint, but they are still visible. So the next thing I'm going to try, because I want to avoid harsh chemicals and cleaners that could damage the headliner or the adhesive underneath it. So the next thing I'm going to try is just this hydrogen peroxide in a spray bottle. I read online a few places said that hydrogen peroxide worked really well, so that's going to be the next step. Here's the headliner after being sprayed with the peroxide and wiped down again with a rag, and it's fairly dry at this point. The lines are almost completely gone. If you really look hard and close and put light on it just right, you can still kind of see the lines, but unless you're just really looking for them, nobody's going to notice. The next thing I was planning on trying was just a clear, mild cleaner. I picked this up from the local grocery store. It's not dyed, it's clear, and it's just a pretty mild multi-surface cleaner. I was planning on using that next, but honestly, after hitting it with the peroxide, the results are plenty good enough for me. I'm just going to leave it as it is and keep an eye on it. If I get more lines coming back, I'll know that the third brake light is leaking again in the car wash, and I'll go back to that. The next thing I may try there is just to put a very thin layer of 100% silicone between the two gaskets that are back there, but I really don't think that'll be necessary.